This is TWiT.
The Data Bill of Rights is that's kind of what this all leads to, right? The book really sets the stage for illustrating the many ways, the sensory overload, the social connections that we make, all of these just ways that our information, our data is being stored, shared, and yet as users we're giving so much, yet we have no control over them. So you've listed in the book the Data Bill of Rights to support that, to ensure rights for the people around their data. At a macro level, explain that a little bit at the macro level, I guess, before we dive in.
So I think that the gap between technology and law is widening. Technology is exponentially evolving, law is not. So what I tried with these two groups of rights I have was to bridge that gap, or to bring the two a little bit closer together again. Mm-hmm. And very roughly on the macro level, as you requested, we can say there are two transparency rights, namely the right that you can see your data and the right that you can see what the refineries do. And therefore, what are called action rights, which means that you have some right to do something with the data, including the right to take your data elsewhere, to not have them locked into one refinery, but to be able to take them. And actually on that note, I'm not sure whether you saw last week the LinkedIn high five case, where LinkedIn was told by the court that they need to open up the data people create for other refineries to actually create products out of, because that was deemed to be the right thing as you put data in, as opposed to block other refineries. Mm-hmm. So very much in sort of my vision of the world is that, we create those data and we want a competition of refineries try to create value out of us, and then we want to pick the one which is the most value for us, not being manipulated what should be the most value for us. As sadly I got a new computer, and rather than staying on Windows 7 I moved to Windows 10. It is sad to see in how many examples Microsoft really tries to push you to do Microsoft things without really having thought it through. I'm happy to give my life into the hands of a Microsoft, but then please be consistent and don't create inconsistent assumptions.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like we've heard about that about Microsoft. Microsoft's not alone in that complaint, but time and time again. So the first in the Data Bill of Rights, of course, is right to access the data, which we've been talking about a lot right now. We already have access to some of that data, but you're not. But like we said earlier, you're not proposing that they give us access to everything, because that takes away competitive advantage. They wouldn't be willing to do that, I wouldn't imagine.
It's less about that. It is much more that I believe to really get value out of my data, I need to have tools that allow me to look at my data. So if you have medical data, you tend to go to a doctor, or at least run a program that analyzes data for you and shows you what potential actions you take. Mm-hmm. Similarly, if I just have my raw data as zeros and ones, there is nothing I can get out of it. So what I want is companies not to take the trivial route out and say, okay, here is a dump of your data, be my guest, because there's nothing I can do with it. But to put some resources behind, and I'm not talking custom programming here, as Google Dashboard does it well, to put some resources behind and let me play with my data. Let me form a mental model of who I actually am. For instance, your favorite dating site, if they allowed me to see that, nobody who I hit up at 3 or 4 in the morning actually turns out to be a happy experience meeting the next day, or the same night, if you will, then maybe I should just simply get that information as I'm doing it. And the other day, I was in Patpong in Thailand. I used to live in Thailand, and I tried to get some money out of the ATM machine around 4 a.m. And I was pretty amazed that the ATM machine said, other people who try to withdraw money at this time of the day regret it afterwards. Are you sure you want to regret?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a prime example. Yeah, that's analysis of many data points, surfacing it in a useful way to the user.